Like, we are going to talk about table saws today. Oh, we're recording still. This is woodworking at the Bear Claw Shop. Woo! Good girl. Alright, so now we're going to start covering tips and tricks. All of these tips and tricks came from the following books: Table Saw Methods by Jim Ritchie, Woodworking Machines, The Art of Woodworking, Mastering Woodworking Machines by Mark, I cannot pronounce that last name, and Fine Woodworkings on Woodworking Machines. So the first thing I was going to cover is table saw lubrication. So again, it is crucial that you keep your table saw clean and well lubricated. Again, some of the best protectants against rust on cast iron are paste wax. What I use is CLP Frog Lube, which is a firearm lubricant, and cornstarch. All three of these work very well at protecting the table saw from surface rust, but also it gives you enough lubrication so that your board can go across the table without any resistance. These two need to be applied and then wiped off because they can both apply themselves to the board you're working with. Whereas cornstarch, you can apply it to the table, wipe off the excess, and go right into cutting. So again, this is probably the cheapest option you got, whereas these two are a little more on the expensive side. The next tips and tricks I'm going to cover is blade setup when it comes to the distance from the inside of the blade to the fence and the blade height. The universal tool that we normally use is a combination square. What I'm going to cover right now is blade height. So right now I'm going to use my combination square. I'm going to set it to a specific height, press it down on the table, and raise the blade until the bubble lines up in the center. I also want perfect contact between the blade and the table, and now it's set at that specific measurement. The other one I can use is a digital caliper. So what I'll do is I'll set my digital caliper to a specific measurement. For right now it's going to be 5/16 of an inch. Put it over top of my blade, and I want contact perfectly down on the table. So the tooth I'm choosing is the very top one, and then lower the blade until I have contact, and now that's set at 5/16. The last one, if you just want to do quick setups, these are machine setup blocks. So what I can do is, if I want to set to a half an inch, so this is a half an inch, I'm going to put this right next to the blade, and I'm going to raise the blade until it's even with that setup block. And now that's exactly a half of an inch. All right? Now, when it comes to width, all right, sticking with setup blocks, all I got to do is put it between the blade and the fence, making sure that I make contact with the tooth. And then when I lock down the fence, I don't want the blade to warp. So I'm going to create a little bit of space. And as I lock it down, this piece should run perfectly between the inside of the blade. The other one is a set of calipers. So I can set my calipers to a specific measurement. Line it up with the tooth. And then tap my fence over. Until I have perfect contact. And now that's set at that specific measurement. The last one is, again, the universal combination square. Set my combination square to the measurement I want, and then add for the blade. So in this case, it's a 1/16 of an inch. So if I want 3 inches, I'm going to do 3 1/16. Down, and now the distance. And the last tool for setting up distance between the inside of the blade fence is the combination square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the distance from the inside of the blade to the fence plus the width of the tooth of my blade. And this is a 1/16 of an inch blade. So when I want to set it to 3 inches, I'm going to set it to 3 1/16. put my combination square in contact with the teeth, tap my fence over, and then lock it down. And now the distance between the inside of the blade to the fence is 3 inches. All right, so again, so from here to here is exactly 3 inches. Now one thing I want to note is normally when I'm ripping in this shop here, I'm actually going to add an additional 1/8 inch from the inside, because after every time I rip, I will always go over to the jointer to clean it up, because even though the saw does rotate at a slower speed and has a cleaner cut than most saws, I still, just as practice, will always joint that edge after I make that cut. All right, so I will always use a jointer to clean up my cuts, so I will always add that additional measurement, which is about 1/16 of an inch for my shop.